In this video, I'll review information from Chapter 17 of Human Anatomy and Physiology, 11th edition. This chapter focuses on the blood. In particular, we'll look at the different blood types and think about the role of those blood types in transfusions. Let's start by looking at the ABO blood groups. So I'll draw your attention to the first column in this table from your textbook. We have the blood groups. So AB, B, A, and O. Those are the four possible blood groups. And so what does that mean? If you are in the AB blood group, what this actually means is that you have red blood cell antigens, also called agglutinogens, for A and B. And so what that means is here's your red blood cell, and on the surface of that red blood cell are going to be expressed two different antigens. So these are proteins that are expressed on the surface of your red blood cells if you are in this AB blood group. So you can see they're both right out there on the surface of the cell. And importantly, these are things that immune cells can detect. So they can come along, and if you are in the AB blood group, luckily, your native plasma antibodies are not going to freak out about these particular RBC antigens, so red blood cell antigens. But bottom line, if you're in blood group AB, that means you express antigens for A and B on the surface of your red blood cells. If you're in blood group B, you can see only the antigens for B are found on the surface of red blood cells. If you are in blood group A, only the antigens for B are on the surface. And if you're type O, you can also think of this almost as type 0, but type O would mean you don't have either antigen on the surface of your red blood cells. So what more does that mean is that if you developed with both types of antigen on the surface of your blood cell, your immune system is not going to form antibodies against either. And that means that you can receive blood from any other blood type. So if you're type AB blood, you are considered a universal recipient. Type B means that you do not have antibodies against the B antigen. So that means that if you receive blood from someone with type B or type O, your immune system will not react to those blood types. But if you have type B blood, that means that you would have a severe reaction if you were transfused with type A blood, because you do have antibodies that will react to the A antigen. The opposite is true for A blood group. You can see it actually, people with type A blood will have antibodies that will react with the B red blood cell antigen. So they can only receive blood from type A or type O individuals. And then finally, we have type O. Because they don't have any, they didn't develop with either of those red blood cell antigens, those individuals with type O blood will have antibodies against both A and B red blood cell antigens. You'll notice that all blood types are able to receive blood from type O individuals. This is why we call people with type O blood, we call them universal donors, because anyone can receive type O blood. And that's because it doesn't have any of those antigens on the red blood cell surface that are going to be reactive in the person receiving the transfusion. You can see that within the US population, uh, the most common blood type is type O. And that really seems to go across all subpopulations within the US. The least common blood type is type AB. So you can see under 10% of the population has that type AB blood. So less than 10% is the universal recipient, and about 50% are universal donors. If you were to want to test blood types, you can do that pretty simply, and you can do that by mixing blood samples with anti-ABO antibodies. And so if you have coagulation, that means that that blood sample is positive for whatever antigen you're testing for. So for instance, if you were to test for A and B, and you see coagulation after adding antibodies against both, that means this is a person with type AB blood. So in both cases, you had coagulation. So this is AB blood. If, on the other hand, you added those antibodies, anti-A and anti-B, and you saw coagulation only with anti-A addition, that means that that person has red blood cells that express the A antigen. So it's a type A individual only. You can see no coagulation with the antibody for B. Type B, you get coagulation in the B. In type O, you would see no coagulation, so no reaction to the antibody for A or the antibody for B. So this is the cheat sheet for looking at ABO blood typing results. In addition, you will often see plus or minus. So if you think about your own blood type, you might be O positive, or maybe you're O negative. And the plus and the minus at the end stands for something called an Rh antigen, or an Rh factor. 85% of people in the United States are Rh positive, meaning they do have that Rh factor. Anti-Rh antibodies are going to form if an Rh negative individual, so someone who doesn't have this Rh factor natively or endogenously, if they're Rh negative, if they receive Rh positive blood, they're going to form those anti-Rh antibodies. This can often occur if an Rh negative parent is carrying an Rh positive fetus. So if the fetus is contributing this Rh factor, the parent will develop antibodies against Rh. This isn't necessarily bad the first time. However, a second exposure, so if this parent had a second child that was also Rh positive, that's going to cause a typical transfusion reaction. So it's going to cause a pretty severe rejection in that case. Luckily, there are things we can do to help prevent that reaction. However, we have to monitor these parents very closely to make sure that none of these transfusion reactions are actually occurring. All right, so here is a question to end this for you. If your blood agglutinated in the presence of either anti-A or anti-B antibody, so here we go, another way of saying that is in the presence of both. So if you put anti-A or anti-B on, the blood agglutinates. Which blood type would you be?